My biggest complaint regarding this movie, not enough shirtless Chris Hemsworth. So Extraction is the latest original movie coming out of Netflix, and it was produced by the Russo brothers, and actually Joe Russo is the one that penned the script, and it is directed by first-time director Sam Hargrave, who was a stunt coordinator on a lot of the MCU films. And this movie stars Chris Hemsworth as Tyler Rake, who is a mercenary who was hired to rescue an international drug lord's son who was kidnapped by a rival international drug lord. But when the entire city of Dhaka, Bangladesh is under the thumb of this rival drug lord, it becomes an almost Mission Impossible rescue situation where there seems to be no way where Tyler is going to be able to save this kid and get out alive. And this was a really fun action movie. Like, the thing about Netflix original movies, for the most part, a lot of them aren't that great and aren't that memorable, but this isn't the case with Extraction. And considering this movie is directed by a stunt coordinator, a lot of people have compared this movie to John Wick, because the John Wick movies were directed by Chad Stahelski, who also had a background in stunt work and made his directorial debut with the John Wick movies. And also with that, the thing about Extraction, I say this movie is called Extra Action because the action in this movie is fucking phenomenal. Like, every punch, every kick, every gunshot, it has weight to it. Almost kind of like what Keanu Reeves did with John Wick. You could tell that pretty much the majority of the stunts were performed by Chris Hemsworth, and that he worked really hard to make this movie believable. Now granted, I say that, and then next thing you know, there's like some behind the scenes footage that releases that turns out Chris Hemsworth didn't do any of the stunts. But in the way this movie was filmed, it looked like he did pretty much the vast majority of his stunts. Even one big one towards the beginning of the movie, there's an incredibly tall cliff and there's water down below, and Chris Hemsworth basically jumped off that cliff into the water, and it didn't look fake. Now granted, I don't know if he actually took that plunge, but I believed he did, and a lot of that was on the strength of the camera work. And speaking of camera work, like, there was so many interesting shots in this movie, and a lot of it throughout the action was a lot of over the shoulder shots, so you pretty much saw everything that the actors were seeing, and because of that, you weren't able to get a full periphery of the exact environment, and so that made things feel way more chaotic considering everything that was going on with this being a rescue mission. And on top of that, there's a car chase in this movie, and I feel like that's one of the best car chases that I've seen in any movie, just in just the way that it was shot. It was supposed to be a chaotic situation, and it felt very chaotic. Like, I loved that car scene. But yeah, going back to what I was saying about people comparing this to John Wick, I would say from an action standpoint, it probably is a little comparative to John Wick, and just in how engrossed you are in the action and the fact that Chris Hemsworth did a lot of his stunts. But from a script standpoint, I would say John Wick is the much stronger movie than Extraction. And that's not to say this movie wasn't enjoyable. This movie was very enjoyable, but I felt like you got way more from the script of John Wick than you did with this movie, even in just learning about who John Wick was and establishing what the John Wick world is like. I felt like you got way more of that than you did in Extraction. Like, for the most part, like, I don't think any movie opened as awesome and told you everything that you needed to know about a character like John Wick did. In the sense of, spoilers for John Wick, but where you had a moment where the main villain, played by Theon Greyjoy, stole John Wick's car, and he took it to John Leguizamo's character to pawn it off, and he found out that was John Wick's car. And then when the father's son called John Leguizamo, was like, "I heard you put your hands on my child. Can I ask why you did that?" And he was like, "Because he stole John Wick's car, sir." And just in the villain's reaction, and you could tell that he was scared, and he was just like, oh, that right there told you everything that you needed to know about John Wick and how badass of a character he is, where even the main villain had some level of caution or apprehension regarding him. And for the most part, you don't really get that from Tyler Rake. Like, why was he the one called to do this Mission Impossible type of scenario? Who was he before all of this? Like, yeah, you get some backstory to Tyler Rake, but I feel like you still don't really know who he is. You don't really know what drives him. And by the end of the movie, I couldn't couldn't really tell you who Tyler Rake is besides the fact that he's a badass. And so that's the one thing I felt like was missing from this story, besides the fact that there weren't really any shirtless Chris Hemsworth scenes. Also, this movie is one of those rare instances where I've never been happier to see little kids get their ass beat. Well, overall, I had a fun time with this movie. I really enjoyed it. Something else that kind of caught my attention that I actually really enjoyed in this movie took place, like I mentioned, in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and a large majority of the cast were South Asians. When a movie takes place in a location outside of the United States, more times than not, these characters are speaking English to each other, even though it takes place in China. They're both Chinese, and yet they're speaking to each other in English. And granted, I understand the movie is made for an American audience, but the thing that I actually appreciated in this movie is the fact that a lot of the times the characters were speaking Hindi to each other. And for me, that just added another level of realism for this movie. Because of all the comparisons to John Wick, I didn't enjoy this movie as much as John Wick, but I still really enjoyed this movie. And I would definitely say Extraction is a high hit. So anyway, have you guys seen Extraction? What did you think about it? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you can, hit that thumbs up button and like this video to really help out the channel. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, please check out the other videos on my channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe for more and hit that bell notification button so you're alerted every single time I post a new video. And tell your friends, families, and neighbors about my channel to help me continue to grow. And as always, I'll catch you guys next time.